This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Hot Takes, the show where I take your hot takes from the internet and answer them here in video format. We're going to jump into the first one from Scott Gilbert, who says this: I see a lot of parallels to the Broncos the year they took Bo Nix. Both teams had terrible QBs they got from massive trades and terrible contracts. Both teams had a good defense and a pretty solid offensive supporting cast that just needed a long-term QB answer. The Broncos didn't need to tank to get Bo Nix. If anything, they reached for him in the draft and it worked out. Kind of feels like that's what the Browns are going for. 100% I agree with you that it feels like the Browns want to be the Broncos. They want to be the 49ers. Are they in a position to become the Broncos or the 49ers is a little bit of a different question, right? Is there somebody in this draft class that's going to be Bo Nix? It's a real question you have to ask. You know, we have found out there's not a Bo Nix in every draft class. So that's the first question. Is there a prospect kind of in the middle of the first round conversation that the Browns feel like they could get, as long as they don't win like 11 games or something like that? And even if they do, they feel like they can trade for that guy. Like, is there a quarterback in this class that fits that description? Right now, all it feels like we know about this draft class is Arch Manning, Dante Moore. Everything else is a mystery, but Arch Manning and Dante Moore. So it's going to be tough to tell if we're going to be in that situation, but there is no doubt that the Browns see themselves as a team that could potentially do that. Now, has that changed a little bit without Miles? I think so, but certainly something that the Browns are hoping to be true for them. But thank you, Scott, for your hot take. The next one is from Aaron. Lesson: worry about cap implications of any move. Never worry about cap implications of any move made by a decent front office, no matter what the pundits tell you. Smart teams, so many ways to not let the cap hurt them. Oh, man. You know, it's kind of like back in the news cycle now. But I remember like so much of the salary cap conversation that people have, it just reminds me of like when I was a kid, how people used to talk about the national debt. Now the national debt's going like in and out of relevance politically. It usually, right now we're in an era where people don't really talk about the national debt like they used to, because both political parties are borrowing a ton of money right now. But there used to be a point in time where like that was a big deal and everybody was like the debt. And both parties, candidates talking about the debt, the budget, the deficit, all of this stuff, right? You know, my parents were very strict about sitting me down and making sure that I watched like that kind of stuff too when I was a kid. They wanted me to be well read. So I just remember as a kid watching these people just talk about the debt all the time. And then like the presidential cycle goes away and then you don't hear about the debt for like 4 years. And then there's another presidential and we're hearing about the debt, right? That's kind of what salary cap talk is about. The reason you don't hear about the debt and why the debt is, like some people don't really take the national debt that seriously, is because the U.S. is a world reserve currency, right? So that means that the dollar is a remarkably resilient force in economics. And that means stuff like heavy, like they're just more resistant to traditional things that would tank a currency, like being in incredible debt, having to print more money because of all the debt that you have, and that creating inflation. I'm not an economist. I am not an economist. So please, if you want to know more about that whole concept, find an economist to talk to and listen to. But I'm just trying to give you what I remember. But basically, the reason why the debt doesn't matter to some people is because the U.S. is a world reserve currency, and that means that printing money doesn't hurt the value of the dollar as much as it would if the U.S. wasn't the world reserve currency. And for those who don't know, the world reserve currency basically means that most of the planet trades on U.S. dollars, right? They have U.S. dollars to back their government. Like a lot of the world has U.S. dollars as their reserve, right? The same way that back in the day, countries used to keep their reserves in gold. Now it's the U.S. dollar. So because that's the case, an incredible amount of security in there, which means that printing money is less detrimental than what it would be if that wasn't the case. Doesn't mean it has no effect, but it does mean that it's a little bit less real. Now, I know this took a wild swing, into Econ 101, political theory 101. I'm kind of afraid to see what the comment section looks like, but let's bring this back to football, all right? So we learned about the deficit and all of that. Why did I teach you all about that stuff? To tell you about the salary cap. The salary cap is the same exact way, where people will complain about the salary cap. They will be like, oh my God, this team's going to be in cap hell. They're going to be screwed because of this. But the reality with the salary cap is that it's not a hard cap in the NFL. You can maneuver it and you can manipulate the salary cap. And it's technically a hard cap, but it's effectively not a hard cap because of how you can move around money, restructure contracts. You can always create space if you need it. Flexibility is easy to find in NFL contracts because NFL contracts aren't fully guaranteed, right? You'll hear about the salary cap being more real in fully guaranteed sports like basketball, where that money's not movable. But in the NFL, where contracts aren't guaranteed, you sign so many of them, there's so much you can do to maneuver the salary cap to make things happen. It doesn't mean that you can turn a bad salary cap situation into like an awesome one, but it does mean that you can basically maneuver the salary cap if you have the willpower. And when I say willpower, I mean an owner who's willing to spend cash. If you have that, you usually can manipulate the salary cap to where it's not restrictive over your ability to build a football team. A reasonable ability to build a football team. And the reason that's the case is because NFL revenues pretty consistently go up, which means the salary cap pretty consistently goes up, which means you could do the whole reverse interest thing with contracts where you just spread them out over time, make financial burdens much lesser over time, right? The cap is going up 8% each year, which lends an incredible amount of security. And the reason that teams can be secure in the salary cap's continued rise is because the NFL's revenue is extremely secure because of television contracts, because of all of the different deals that the NFL has, and also because of the way that the NFL is set up, where all 32 teams equally share revenue. Every team has that same security, basically. So that's how we get to this place where the salary cap is. I don't know if that's what y'all wanted when this hot take was introduced, but I think this could be entertaining. You know what I mean? But we're going to jump back to more hot takes, but I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a fun way to earn cash while you watch your favorite teams. No complex betting rules. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Here are my picks for this upcoming season, AFC North edition. Jimmy Bernard, I have less than 475. This has to do with volume available in Pittsburgh's offense. Quincy Judkins, I have over 975. Browns improved line. I think the run game's going to be better with it. Chase Brown, under 900 yards. Joe Burrow equals less rushing yards yards usually for the Bengals offense. Mark Andrews, more than 475 yards. Lamar's going to need a safety blanket. Check to see if PrizePicks is available in your state. You could follow me on the app at Quinn_C to see all my lineups. Download the PrizePicks app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineup to download the app using the link in the description. John with the next question says this: I think Geno Smith comparison for Shador Sanders is perfect. I also agree and have said this from the start that Sanders doesn't have the elite traits to play the way he does. I think that's the most difficult hurdle for Shador to overcome, right? And I've tried to talk about this from the perspective of somebody who did like some of what Shador brings to the table pre-draft, but I'm not bought into the hype on Shador. And it feels like either you buy into the hype or you think he's like the worst player in the world. But yeah, I think Geno Smith, my comps for him, I think they've been pretty consistent since even before he got drafted to Cleveland. And I think they've been pretty fair, to be honest, given what the media landscape looks like around Shador, and how people choose to cover him. But yeah, I think that with Shador, he has to learn how to play football a different way in order to survive at quarterback with the skills that he does have. Because he does have enough skills, theoretically, to be able to play starting quarterback in the NFL eventually. The problem is, in order to get to that point, he has to kind of reconfigure how he plays. Because how he played at Colorado in his rookie year, that's not going to fly for him in the NFL. And I know people don't love hearing that, but that's just reality, right? He's going to have to be a different player in the NFL than he was at Colorado. He's going to have to take things that are a little bit easier. He's going to have to, be a lot more disciplined in his approach if he wants to be able to be the kind of quarterback that he can be. And until I see him make strides in that area, it's going to be hard for me to get excited about it, because realistically, what we're talking about, a metamorphosis and how you think about the game, how you go through the game, how you approach the game, it's possible, but it's going to take a long time, more than likely. You know what I mean? Like, this is why, my take has been with Shador is like, I don't know if the first team that drafts him is going to be the team that gets the most out of him, because he might just be a longer project. And I think people don't really grasp that with quarterbacks who aren't athletic marvels. Like, you could look at a Jalen Milroe or a Lenore Sellers or even an Anthony Richardson, and you can easily convince yourself, oh, well, we can work on that guy for X amount of time. He's going to be a project. It's going to take some time, right? But when a quarterback is not an athletic marvel, then all of a sudden we're just expecting that quarterback to be good right away. But I think it's easier to play early when you're more athletic than it is when you are a quarterback who has to rely on skills, not traits, because your skills take so long to translate to the NFL. Dylan Gabriel's another example of this. He has nothing but skills, really skilled guy, no traits, not an athlete, none of that. And look how bad he looked early on, because his skills didn't translate immediately. Like, in order for him to play the way he wants to play, he has to just develop those skills much further than where they are now. And oftentimes it's guys who are more reliant on skill than just raw athletic ability that take a little longer to figure it out, because it's also harder to get those guys reps while trying to win football games, Dill Pickle says this: I have a different take on the situation. I can't tell how good Shador Sanders is because I feel like a lot of his mistakes are due to a lack of preparation. Let's highlight that. Lack of supporting talent, lack of chemistry with the team, and a system that everybody struggled in last year. I think that part's fair. I think this year we'll be able to get a great look at his potential or lack thereof. I think the book's not written on him, I don't think you can be definitive about what he is and what he isn't yet. And that's why I haven't been definitive on what he is and what he isn't. I've been clear on what my expectations are for this year, just simply because of the situation the Browns are in. But as far as Shador's future, the door is open for him. I don't know if just one more season is going to close the door on his entire career, but it might close the door on his run here in Cleveland. That being said, right, I remember with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a lot of the excuses early on for Dorian was, the coaching staff didn't put him in a good position to win. He wasn't prepared when he went out there and played. And people didn't like this point when I made it, but it ended up being one of my takes that aged especially well. Because at the time, I had pointed out that somebody being the backup quarterback and not being prepared is not necessarily something that reflects well on that quarterback. And as DTR's career continued, lack of preparation kind of continued to be a thing with him. So not to say that it's going to be the same case with Shador, but I do think we need to consider the idea that, some of that lack of preparation was on the coaching staff from last year, but it might also be on Shador too. There needs to be room for that possibility, because ultimately when you're the backup quarterback, not being prepared is not really an excuse. Not having all the reps in the world is not really a great excuse. And we're not just talking about one game. I mean, he played 7 games last year. How can you play 7 games and you're not prepared? Like, I don't get it. Like, at that point, like, you've had the reps, you've had the practice snaps. How are we talking about, he didn't get enough reps in camp after his 7th start in the NFL? You know what I mean? So I do look at stuff like that, and it makes me question more than I think people would want me to question there. But I'll just caution that with, like, I said this about Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and it pissed everybody off when I said it, but I was right. And it might be similar here. You know what I mean? But yeah, he'll get this year. He'll get a chance to prove who he is, but he has to be careful because you don't get that many opportunities as a 5th-round pick. And he's already had 2. All right, World War Z says Carson is a terrific player with a great attitude, but that's a lot of pressure to be the face of the franchise to put on a second-year player. I can see Fannin as the leader on offense and Carson as the leader on defense. AB has required some great young players. Verse is a terrific player with a great attitude too. Sadly, he'll suffer from comparison with Miles, which is unfair to Verse. Kind of and kind of not. It's unfair to Verse because Verse didn't do anything to be compared to Miles. But to the Browns, this is kind of the bet that they made, right? When you trade Jared Verse, Myles Garrett, and you get Jared Verse back. You're making very clear that Verse is the centerpiece in that trade for you. Then those comparisons have to happen. Like it just straight up has to in order to evaluate the trade, because that's what the Browns said they did it for. So Verse didn't put himself in that position, but the Browns have made it so that you have to make the comp. He didn't make the trade. AB made the trade. Yeah. In order to evaluate AB, we need to make the comp. Verse is good and will be good in the community. That's awesome. I like to see JOK get the job with the team. He would be a nice voice. Anytime somebody talks about bringing Nick Chubb back, I'm all in. You know me, I'm always talking about bringing back Nick Chubb. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if that void that Miles is going to leave on this team, as far as, him being the face of it, if that's going to be a positive or negative thing for this team. Because I can see with the young team that becomes a vacuum that kind of consumes people. I could also see with the young team that they kind of get closer because of that vacuum.